Hey guys, it's Nikki. Good morning. Um, you've heard from Portia about the difference between standards-based grading and standards reference grading, and you've heard about how to determine an overall standard score in the standards-based grading system and the tools that we have to do that. And now I bet you're wondering how Infinite Campus is going to achieve all of that. I'm not sure if you've thought about what your Infinite Campus gradebook looks like, but if you open your Infinite Campus gradebook right now, it should look something similar to this. And we've got the standard here. G1 is the standard. And we've got some assignments on that standard, and they're weighted 2 points or 4 points. And we've got the scores on the assignments here. And then we've got, here's the category, the standard, and the only kind of score that we have on that standard is a percentage. And we know that we don't report in percentages, we report on a 4-point scale. Also, these percentages are basically just a weighted average, a calculation of the scores on the assignment. And I'm sure that you've learned already from your earlier sessions that standards-based grading is not necessarily always based on a calculation or an average. There's more to it than that. So we've got to kind of think a little bit differently about the way that we're doing Infinite Campus. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. So just why does it matter what Infinite Campus looks like? We know that some of the benefits of standards-based grading are that we have clarity of mastery. Students have clarity of mastery given those mastery scales. It's very clear when they look at those mastery scales what skills they're supposed to master and what they need to do to achieve mastery of the standard. It's really easy to give targeted feedback around those skills that are on the mastery scale to tell students you're doing this really well, but you need to work on this if you want to get to mastery, because this is where you're falling a little bit short. One of the really cool things about standards-based grading is that it does not penalize students for mistakes that are made early during the learning process. We know that in that beginning of learning, it can be super messy, and we want our students to have a growth mindset and be comfortable to take risks and not be penalized for it. And in the current state of Infinite Campus, they are being penalized for those early learning scores that might be low. And so we want to correct that. Mr. Stewart has been doing some really awesome work having students reflect on their learning and reflect on the mastery scale in his classroom. And when he did that work, he noticed that students were not able to see their standard score on Infinite Campus. So he created a video for us to kind of share his story about what he noticed and how he found a workaround.
Okay, Nikki asked me to make this video explaining kind of how I am using the mastery scales in my class and how I'm having them reflect and kind of what that led me to think about Imminent Campus in the current setup. Okay, so, and also the screen might look a little weird that's showing because I'm trying to hide the students' names, but I'm just going to go ahead and start. So I made this reflection because the whole point of mastery-based grading is that the students kind of know where they lie. You know, they can look up the point that they got, like a 3 out of 4. They know what that means based on the mastery scale, or they should be able to. So what I made is I made this little reflection that goes over kind of how to reflect on the mastery scale. And I do this basically for every standard. This is just what I did for my first standard, G1. So I said, look at the G1 mastery scale. And I said in Google Classroom, because I posted it in Google Classroom for them to see. Okay, and then of course, the students, they're going to kind of get a little confused by this, all the technical wording and all that. So I just went through and I explained to them what each level looks like based on our content, and kind of have them reflect and think where they are on the mastery scale. Okay, so then they would answer and they would answer why and all that. Okay, and that part was good. Then we got to the second question, which said, look at your current score from. And I said Friday's quiz because I didn't enter the standard score yet, but that was basically their standard score anyway. And I want them to look at their score and figure out what it was. And the reason why I did the quiz is because in Infinite Campus, we saw this problem where it doesn't show them their points, like it doesn't show them what their standard score is. It doesn't show them like a 1, 2, 3, or 4. It gives them this percentage. And we don't want to show them a percent because that's kind of the whole, we're trying to move away from that with mastery-based, standards-based grading and using a mastery scale and all that. So the way I got around that is, so I've entered in all their assignments right here, okay? And then I have a standard score. So I've given them the standard score that they deserve, a 1, 2, 3, or 4. In some cases, maybe a missing. And I base that off the evidence they've given me through the assignments. So if you look at all this, these are all their assignments, and they're actually all dropped. Okay, and the reason why I did that is because if I do that, they can come over here to their G1 category score, and they can clearly see, what they got. They got a 4 out of 4. If they got a 75, they got a 3 out of 4. If they got like a 25, that would be a if they got a 25, it'd be a 1 out of 4, and so on and so forth. And they can do this for each standard. I have 2 standards entered so far. Okay, and the reason why I'm doing this is because hopefully they can look at the standard and be like, okay, I got a 3 out of 4. Let me go over here and look at the mastery scale, see what that means, and figure out how I get from a 3 to a 4. Okay, and hopefully that helps them reflect. It seemed to do so on our first reflection so far. And I was just kind of showing the way I got around it through Infinite Campus. There's 2 kind of ways to do it. I chose this way, and there's a few reasons why. One reason why I chose the drop, and it's because if you drop, it makes all the assignments white out, okay? And then I can clearly see all of these standard score. It's colored as either green or red, okay? So I can clearly see all their standard score, and I don't get, it's not all the colors aren't messing together, and it's just very easy to see, okay, this is their standard score. I can look at what they have and look at, where they lie and where they need to go on to improve themselves. Okay, that's one reason I did it. The other reason why I did it is because the alternate, if like the alternative, of dropping the assignments. So instead of dropping it, the alternative that you could do is make it have a weight of 0. But if you have a weight of 0, then it doesn't really affect their grades as they're doing assignments and so on and so forth. And that was a problem I kind of had with Empower, and I feel like a lot of people had, was that you would have students do assignments and it wouldn't always affect their score, which isn't a bad thing. But then some students only get motivated by grades. So this is kind of like a nice balance in between of, okay, we're going to have you put your grades in and they're going to affect your grade, but then once you have enough evidence for a standard score, we're going to drop them. And that way, it still affects their score, and they can kind of see what trajectory they're on. And then once they get their standard score, that's the main score that they have. Okay, that's the main reason why I'm doing it like this. And I get some questions from parents about the dropped assignments and all that. But once I explain it to them, they kind of understand. They understand kind of it's similar to Empower, but the whole point of this is that we're trying to help your students truly know exactly where they lie on all these mastery scales. Okay, so hopefully that helps kind of have an idea of how maybe to structure your Infinite Campus to help students understand what they truly need to do to approach mastery on whatever standard they're struggling
on. Okay. Shout out to Mr. Stewart for being kind enough to share his story with us and helping us find an easy solution for that. We appreciate his time on that. So good news. The good news is that students and parents and teachers can really quickly and easily see where a student is on a specific standard in relation to the mastery scale. I loved how Mr. Stewart had just to look at those green and red columns. Everything else is just evidence towards the standard, and the green columns are the ones that really matter. And they really stood out in his grade book and made it pretty easy to do. So because we want to track from year to year mastery of standards, we're going to enter our standard scores into Empower at the end of the year. So that way next year, the teacher can pull up that evidence and see where a student was on a standard and what skills they may have already mastered. So if we already have those standard scores in Infinite Campus and we've already kind of highlighted them green like that, then transferring those to Empower is going to be a lot easier at the end of the year. So we're saving ourselves some time there. But I think the biggest benefit of this is that we are truly following that standards-based grading model where students are not penalized for making mistakes early in the learning process. That's so important if we want students to have a growth mindset and to really try things and take risks. And so I think that's super important. Mr. Stewart talked about parent communication in his video, and that's going to come from Mr. Jepson. You may have to field some questions, and if you feel like there's a question that you're not sure how to answer, then give me a yell or talk to Portia or Mr. Jepson, and we would be happy to help you talk through those situations that you're not sure about how you might answer questions from parents. Just because we've given lots of information in this video about how Infinite Campus can do this, we created a one-pager for you with all of that information on there. And this is going to be posted in the MLCHS Coaching Instructional Coaching Google Classroom. Sorry about that. So you've already seen some of this before. It has been revised a bit since last time it was posted based on what Mr. Stewart discovered. But categories are labeled as a standard. All priority standards are included. Some supporting standards may be included at the teacher's discretion. Each category weight is 1.0. Each priority category should have at least 3 pieces of evidence at an MAS of 4. The only assignment that will be used to calculate the category score will be the overall standard score. Everything else is going to be dropped. Assignments assess the skills of a standard, either basic or complex, as noted on the mastery scale. If basic skills are assessed, the assignment is worth 2 points and has a multiplier of 0.2. If complex skills are assessed, the assignment is worth 4 points and has a multiplier of 0.8. All scores are 1, 2, 3, or 4, no 0.5s. We don't have 0.5 language on the mastery scales, so we can't justify a 0.5 to a student or a parent. We can justify the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s because we have language for all of those on our mastery scale. So we need to stick to those score values. Assignment scores will be dropped once enough evidence is provided to determine the overall standard score. So until there's enough evidence, it will be that calculated weighted average. But once there's enough evidence to determine that overall standard score, that will be dropped so that the overall standard score is the true measure of the student's mastery. It's best practice to use the standard code or the name in the name of the assignment. It just provides more clarity to students and parents and to you as well. So that'll be on the Google Classroom so that you can access that. And your follow-up for this learning target is just to make those adjustments in Infinite Campus following the one-pager that's in our Google Classroom and Mr. Stewart's video. We want to make sure that our gradebook is reflecting true standards-based grading. So there will be parent communication, so parents will know when they see those grades dropping what's going on. We're going to have a helpline for you if you have questions and you're not sure what to do in the case of X, Y, or Z. So call that helpline and we'll come running and help you and answer your questions and support you however we can. I want to thank you so much for your flexibility and for always being willing to do what's best for students. We're so glad to have you here at Collins, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.